downtown Campbell, and I'm inspecting the hackberry trees that are the prominent street tree that they use for the entire downtown district. I've recently observed that there are a number of the hackberry trees that are showing an awful lot of dead. Granted, they're starting to lose their leaves at this time of year, but this center branch up here is almost entirely dead. There's a lot of dieback throughout here, and I've noticed it over the past, several months, that it seems to be spreading all the way down through the downtown district. So I want to get up inside this tree and do an inspection and see if I can figure out what's causing the problem. Now I'm up in the upper canopy of the tree, and my first observation were these little tiny mushrooms growing on the wood, the fungus, the growth that's on there. That tells me that this particular branch has been dead for a while. I don't see the fungus as the cause, it just tells me that things have been going for a while. There's a little bit of discoloration right here, which leads me to believe that there may be some trunk canker. I see some cracking right here, and this particular limb is also entirely dead. That side over there has a little bit of life on it, but the upper portions are dead. There's a lot of small branches that are dead that are not associated with the whole limb, but throughout the entire canopy I see an awful lot of dieback. And I'm looking for something really specific to tell me that this is the problem, and so far I have not been able to recognize anything that jumps out at me and says, oh, that's what's wrong with the tree. Okay, I'm in another area of the tree right now, and what I'm looking at is some drying out of a small branch that has completely died, and it's associated with another branch that's alive, but portions of it have died. And I broke off a couple of these branches, and they show some discoloration on the inside. Some real significant drying out. There's enough dieback up here that I'm quite concerned. It's a hackberry tree, Celtis family, and I am not real familiar with what diseases attack the hackberry tree. And it's quite possible that it's a fairly new problem. I've been noticing many trees that in the past did not show any symptoms of diseases that I'm experiencing or I'm observing now that I didn't see before. So my thought is I can see some little spotting in certain areas on the branches, and I believe there's either a trunk canker or some other disease. Well, I see a little bit of cracking up there, and it goes down, and that portion is alive. Now the problem is, when we prune out all the dieback on this tree, it's going to leave the tree rather unsightly. So another problem is, it is the significant tree for the entire downtown area of Campbell. So if we have a disease outbreak that spreads because of such a vast monoculture environment, then the town is going to be really hurting. The city of Campbell is really going to be impacted, both financially, aesthetically, and from the standpoint of their impact on the way their city looks. This is the main drag. I'm early enough so there's not a lot of cars parking here, but in a couple hours there will not be an available place to park in this entire downtown strip here. Another observation is all these trees were planted as sidewalk trees in these growing containments that they have to expand as the trees grow. So the root zone is almost entirely growing in an area of cement and asphalt. So it's a pretty harsh environment for these trees to survive in the first place. So any disease problems or any organisms that are going to be attacking these trees, the problem is exacerbated by the fact that the trees are not able to sustain themselves as well as they could if they were growing in a normal soil environment. Now this is the tree adjacent to the one I was just looking at, and it has some small dead branches and lots of twig dieback throughout the tree. There's a few branches up high that are a little bit larger that are completely dead. There is some mistletoe up there. That's the first mistletoe that I've seen. And once again, very tough area for a tree to survive. Some of these trees have gotten rather large. Now this one is one of the healthier specimens. You can see that the foliage looks much better, and it has not started dropping its leaves as quickly either. However, I do see 1, 2 interior branches that are dead. It looks like there's some chewing. Squirrels are known to chew on the branches of hackberries, and I've seen whole limbs die back. That was my first thought, that maybe it was associated with animals. Now another problem with the hackberry tree is they are being attacked by the hackberry aphid, which causes a dripping from the trees, a sort of a honeydew that drips all over the sidewalks. And many of the businesses now have to hose off their sidewalks every day. It's in the fall right now, so the problem isn't so bad, but we still can see one of the vendors over here who has to keep his front area clean. Now many of the sidewalks are used for outdoor dining, so the trees can be quite troublesome for the public to even want to sit down. In many cases, the trees cause the sidewalks to become so sticky that just walking is a nuisance. And when you park underneath one of these trees, the pitchy oozing that's caused by the aphids causes damage to cars. It gets them all sticky, in some places it's excessive. Hackberry trees are not an easy tree to treat in terms of pest control. You can spray the entire tree, but because it's in such a prominent area, that's difficult to do. Pesticide applications around businesses is a very difficult operation to perform without causing difficulties with the public. Many of these trees have been impacted over the years. This particular tree has been hit many times by trucks, and somebody ran into this and it got hit yet once again, which adds to the difficulties of the trees to sustain themselves. Now a few of these trees have root systems that extend into areas that are more amenable to root development. And as you can see, the roots systems on some of these trees are growing very fast. And this cast iron enclosure now needs to be cut out yet again. So it's a matter of maintenance. So I'm not surprised that some of these trees are doing better than others, but I'm afraid to say that I believe that we're going to see some lifting of the sidewalks in a short period of time. There's one over here that's very large. It looks like they've already had to do some sidewalk grinding. Yeah, this tree, and amazingly, this tree is not that old. It's only about 25 years old. I remember when these trees were planted, and there was a lot of discussion about what kind of trees the city of Campbell should choose. And the hackberry tree, there's a good example of all the, oh yeah, very sticky. It's kind of hard to see in this light, but all these leaves are very sticky from the hackberry aphid. And you can see the little white aphids up there.
Now there are many diseases that attack different species of trees, and some of the diseases are fairly new. And I've been looking around for symptoms that is indicators of a problem, and I found a little bit of what appears to be a trunk canker when you have some weeping and exudate from the tree that is basically let's see, it's kind of like a clogging of the arteries, where you've got a system that is actually clogging up all the transport tubes just directly underneath within the cambium here. And there's a little discoloration right in through here, from here to here. And when I look throughout the whole tree, I see a lot of dieback of the leaves. And this winter it's going to be very, very clear, because a tree that is deciduous is supposed to drop all of its leaves. But when the leaves die, they don't go through the natural abscission process. So when you're looking at the trees throughout the town in the wintertime, they should be completely bare. But if you see a lot of dead leaves hanging on, like up and through here, and the large tree over in front of the Starbucks over there, the whole top canopy of that one looks like the entire top is dying back. There's a lot up and through this tree as well, and over here. If the leaves stay on throughout the whole winter and don't release naturally, that's a good indicator that you've got a lot of dieback and a lot of problems. Now this hackberry has gone through the natural abscission and it has lost all of its leaves. And if you look throughout the entire canopy, you don't see any leaves that are hanging on. Now in a big windstorm, even the ones that hang on can get knocked out of the tree. But this is an indication of what the tree should look like. Now couple that with the tree right next to it, and you can see up in the upper canopy, it should be much barer. But all in through here, all these leaves are hanging on, and if you go up there and you tug on them, they don't break off. See, during the deciduous cycle, there's a time of the year when the leaves just release themselves. They call it the abscission layer just releases, and it's often clear when you see a tree with a lot of brown leaves in it that it's either a branch that is broken and didn't go through the cycle, or a branch that has died or is in trouble in some way. Now I'm quite worried about this. I can see that because the town, the city of Campbell, chose this single tree as their prominent tree for this stretch, that if they have a problem that attacks most or many of the trees, it's going to be devastating. They really should have, now it's too late to say what they should have done because it is what it is, but it's a good indicator for other cities that may be considering planting an avenue of trees. When you plant the exact same species throughout a big area, if you have an attack of insects, it can be exacerbated because the food supply is huge and the problem grows exponentially. If you have a disease that moves in, much like the Dutch elm disease back in the Midwest a long time ago, whole towns were wiped out because they were planted primarily with the elm trees. Well, here we have another situation of the hackberry tree being the prominent tree. And another huge difficulty is going to be, how do they start over? Just the logistics in getting these stumps out of these tiny little planting areas is going to be really difficult. You can't get a standard stump grinder in here that works its way all the way up to it, so you have to grind from the top down, and that really makes it difficult to extract the entire stump. And the roots that extend beyond this are going to be filling up, the growing areas all the way around. So the best that you can hope for when the time comes to replace these is to do basically a minimal grinding. You can go down maybe 16 inches or so, and the new trees are going to be pretty much a pot surrounded by the wood from the roots on the outskirts. The only other option would be to tear up everything and start over, and that's a huge expense. So I don't have any good answers. I wish I could come out and say this is clearly the problem, but I believe we have a trunk canker disease. I'm not sure exactly which one it is. I know there are some trunk canker diseases. There's one called thousand canker diseases that has been attacking the walnut trees, and the symptoms look very similar. I don't know if the celtis is susceptible to it. Like I said, there's so many new things that are happening that it's really difficult to dial it in.
But most of these diseases do not have a cure. Most of the trunk canker diseases do not have a solution. So we're looking at a potentially significant problem. So my recommendation at this point is going to be wait until the spring, observe them through the winter to see how much dieback is still hanging in the tree from the existing leaf hanging on, the leaves that are stuck on the trees, but observe the new spring growth. At some point you're going to need to go up there and cut out some of the dead, but that'll leave many of the trees rather unsightly, and it most likely will not be a solution to the problem. It's more of an aesthetic solution. Okay, I cut a couple of examples here out of one of the trees that shows quite a bit of dieback, and as you can see, there's a lot of the tip branches that are dying. And if we look really closely down in here, I did a little bit of a cutting here, and you can see the healthy tissue goes into a very quick drying out. This whole portion here is dead. This portion over here is dead. This is dead. This is dead. There's a lot of dieback within the branches themselves. Now there's a lot of diseases that act this way. Verticillium wilt is a disease that shows little areas and causes some blackening and some drying out. And that's a possibility. I see that this particular bit is totally dead. I cut it and you can see that it's starting to separate a little bit. I look at the tips. This one is still somewhat green on the inside, so it's drying out rapidly. If I look at the twig itself, you can see a discoloration from here to here. So there is sort of a lesion line right in through there, and this whole part of the twig is definitely drying out and working its way down. Now the problem, once it's in the system of the tree, can spread down all the branches here. Now if this was fire blight, my recommended procedure would be to get up there and cut out all the infected branches back beyond this healthy point right here, because you don't want to cut it off right there. You want to cut it off below that so that whatever is spreading down through the active tissue will be slowed down. I would also make the recommendation to sterilize your pruning tools, preferably between cuts, so you're not making a cut from an infected branch and then actually causing the spread of the disease. Now, not knowing exactly what this problem is, that's just an educated guess. That's not an answer, but I know for fire blight it does slow it down. There's no cure for the fire blight, but we have a lot of pear trees that we treat that way, and it seems to extend their lifespan. So that's about the best I can come up with. There's a little bit of discoloration on the bark right there. Now I'm going to continue to research hackberry trees and see if I can find out if anybody else has come up with an answer or at least the identification of the disease. Now it may be wise to take some of these samples and send them off to a lab and have the pathogen identified.